Okay. Hi, my name is Bob Belmont, and I'm an entomologist. I guess you all know what an entomologist is, right? Someone who works on bugs, with bugs, insects. Okay. I got interested in insects when I was your age. Have any of you ever collected insects? Butterflies? Beetles? Yeah. Good. Good, because I loved collecting when I was a little kid. And then when I got into school, I made a collection from my yard when in science class. And then when I decided to study it in college, I went to the University of California and I got my 4-year degree in the study of bugs. And then after that, I was an entomologist for Del Monte Foods. And then I went back to school and got my master's degree in entomology. And I studied a forest entomology problem in the pine trees, bugs and pine trees here in Florida. So I got my master's degree in entomology from the University of Florida here. And after that, I started a pest control company. And then I worked my pest control company treating bugs in your homes for about 20 years. And then I was bought out by Massey Services, and I'm now Massey Services Training and Technical Director, still an entomologist. So today I'm going to do a recap, a review of the bugs and insects and what you already know about insects. And I'm going to show you some insects you've probably never seen in your life before. And then I'm going to tell you all about the different kinds of jobs you can have in entomology. So to start out with, I have a little presentation on insects. Here we go. Okay, and I can just press down.
Can you guys see the PowerPoint? Okay.
Okay. Is there another class coming on? Okay. So okay. So there's thousands of insects on Earth. More living creatures with insects than pretty much everything except bacteria. So insects, they all have something in common. In a group of insects, they all have how many legs? Does anyone know? How many legs does an insect have? 2, 4, 6, or 8? No, 6. Insects all have 6 legs. They have 6 legs and they have 3 body parts, the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. The head is the sensory center. They have the mandibles where they chew, they can see other bugs coming at them, they can see where they're going, and they also have these little antennae, which are their noses. The antennae are their smell apparatuses on them that make them, allow them to smell each other. And then with their mouth, they can either poison the victim, or they can chew and chew up leaves or chew up particles, or they can suck your blood. They're very specialized mouth parts on the head. And of course, the antennae, there's all these different kinds of antennae, and they have names. Look at all the different kinds of antennae. Insects are identified by different antennal shapes. You're all familiar with butterflies and how they have those long, thin antennae and the little tiny lobe at the end. Well, the butterfly there, it's in the second row, and the third one over, that's your butterfly head. But then the antenna on a moth, that's the very first one on the lower row. It's called plumose. Those antennae are sometimes fuzzy, or there's sometimes just a little string like in the center of it. The males have the plumose antennae, and the females have the little string that's in the center without the feathers on it. The feathers allow the male to smell the female better because they have lots of sensory organs on them. And then mouth parts, they can be chewing, they can be siphoning, they can be sponging, they can be sucking your blood, they can suck the blood of other insects. So many different kinds of mouth parts, and they're also used in identifying bugs. Now the second part of the insect is the thorax, just behind the head, and it's the central portion where the legs and the wings are attached. So they have 6 legs attached to the thorax, and then they have 2 or 4 wings. Have you ever seen a 3-winged insect that only has 3 wings? If one of the wings breaks off, then it's got 3 wings. If it has 4 wings and one breaks off, then it's got 3, right? Okay. Some insects, though, have no wings, like the bed bug in the lower right. That's the bed bug. Those little things are only about 1/4 of an inch long, but they can suck your blood. And some of us get them in our beds and we have to vacuum them all the way. And then the abdomen is the last part of the insect. That's the part where they sting you or where they can mate. And the ovipositor is on it. That's the egg-laying apparatus that the female has. And sometimes that egg-laying apparatus is modified into a stinger. And they have breathing apparatuses, which are like their mouths, where they breathe, their nose and the mouth. They're all along the sides of the abdomen, and that's called spiracles. That's where they breathe with. Their abdomen is where they breathe. They don't breathe from their head. So that when they eat, all of the food is processed inside their gut, and that's also in the abdomen. Okay, so all insects have an exoskeleton. And the exoskeleton is a wax, but it's not exactly like the wax in a candle or the wax in your ear, but it is a wax, very similar, and it coats the body. Some waxes are softer, like on the termites in the bottom, and some are harder, like on a ladybug or a beetle, and that's called a cuticle when it's real hard shell on a beetle. Also, there's 4 ways in which an insect grows. They can either have no metamorphosis, like in silverfish. They can have gradual metamorphosis, like in crickets and grasshoppers and chinch bugs and bed bugs. And they can have incomplete metamorphosis, like in dragonflies and damselflies. And there's complete metamorphosis, meaning an egg, a caterpillar, a cocoon, and then the adult emerges. And flies and butterflies and moths and ants and bees and wasps and fleas and beetles all have complete metamorphosis. So let's look at the metamorphosis a little closer. There's your silverfish. They just molt and molt and molt and molt. And even when they're adult, they still molt. And there's never any other stages. They look all the same. And the only way you know it's an adult is if it starts laying eggs. And then, well, that's an adult then. And they start out really, really, really tiny, the size of a pinhead. And then they grow to the size of a normal silverfish, and they nibble on things up in your attic, right? Then you've got gradual metamorphosis, where you have an egg capsule, and that can have a number of eggs in it, and then they all hatch out into nymphs, and the nymphs start molting and growing in each stage until the final molt has wing pads like the one just before that adult, and the wing pads, when they hatch out of the last molt, they become an adult and with fully grown wings. Then you have incomplete metamorphosis, like the dragonfly and damselfly, and you can see there the naiad that comes out of the egg, and then the adult cracks open and comes out. The naiad cracks open, and the adult dragonfly comes out. And then you have complete metamorphosis, where you have an egg giving rise to a larva, and the little caterpillar molts again, cracks open, is a little larger. Sometimes it eats its own shell. Sometimes the shell is discarded and the head capsule is discarded, and it just grows a bigger one. And then it sometimes changes colors. Sometimes they're green, sometimes they're brown, sometimes a little line in their body, and the colors on the body can change. And they can really drastically change from green all the way to a brown caterpillar later on. And then the caterpillar just starts hardening and slowing down, and it gets real hard, and it turns into a cocoon or a pupa or a chrysalis. And the chrysalis is this hard little thing that wiggles a little bit, and after about a week or two, it just cracks open, and the adult butterfly or moth hatches out, or the adult beetle hatches out. So that's complete metamorphosis. And again, the beetles, the butterflies, the fleas and flies and bees and wasps, they all have complete metamorphosis. Here's an example of Cecropia moth. And you see its eggs, and then the eggs hatch out into larvae, which grow into that big caterpillar with spines on it. And then the pupa emerges, and the pupa is hard, and then emerges, and finally your adult hatches out, and those are beautiful moths, aren't they? Insects also have to defend themselves. Some have a hard body, like the ladybug. Others have spines, like that urticating caterpillar. Those little spines are urticating, meaning they give off poison. And if the spines get in your skin and you touch one of those caterpillars, the spines break off, and there's multiple micro spines that are all giving off poison in your whatever touched your skin. And it'll keep hurting you until you tape them out with Scotch tape or duct tape. And if you tape all those little spines out, then you'll be fine and it won't hurt anymore. If you don't tape it up and the teacher just, or your parents just coat it with water and soap and put some ointment on it, then it's going to get worse and worse and worse. So if you know it's a caterpillar, you've always got to use Scotch tape. And finally, you have the hissing roach that makes noises that scares birds away. So there's all kinds of defenses they have so that you won't want to touch them, you won't want to bother them, and it saves their life by having those things on it. And finally, you have protective coloring. They can blend right on into the environment. They can be like that praying mantis on the right there that is like looks just like a leaf, and the bug will come right up, a butterfly will land by him, and suddenly the leaf will move and his leg will come out and grab the butterfly. Or like those little thorny tree hoppers down in the bottom left, where the bird lands next to him and thinks there are little thorns on the plant and flies away, yet there would have been real juicy if they had eaten the little tree hopper, but the tree hopper looked like a thorn, so it saved its life. Or it can just blend in with the environment like this moth here. That's the geometrid moth in the leaves. And that little moth there looks just like a leaf until you walk near it, and then it just flies out from under. You say, where did it come from? The bird wouldn't even have seen it because it looks just like the same color as what it's on. So there's a lot of neat ways that insects can blend in with the environment so it saves their lives with their protective coloring. Also, you have the monarch and the viceroy butterflies. Those are two neat butterflies where the birds don't like to eat the monarch because the monarch, the young monarchs live on milkweed. And because they live on milkweed, then what happens is the flavor of the milkweed gets in their body, and when a bird tries to peck the monarch, it says, ooh, it tastes like milkweed. It's foul flavor, so they spit it out. And then another butterfly that's a totally different family, this called the viceroy to the right, it's a totally different, it looks a lot like it, doesn't it? But it's totally different. And so because it's different, the birds don't touch it either because it thinks it looks so much the same that it's going to taste bad, so it's not going to eat it. And that way it saved its life because it would have tasted really good, but the bird didn't know that. Same with the yellow jacket. When it gets stung, it says, I'm never touching one of those again. And then the flower fly next to it looks a lot like it in color, so the bird says, I'm never going to peck one of those, it's going to sting me. Yet the flower fly doesn't sting at all. So those are protective colorings that help the insects in their lives. And then, of course, other things that help the insects are those stupid green stinky bugs. You see the one on the left there, that green stink bug? Have you ever stepped on one of those? Well, they stink, don't they? I can't stand them. They smell like wet socks, don't they? And then you never want to get stung by a yellow jacket, because look at that stinger that goes into your skin, and it really hurts when you get stung by a yellow jacket. And of course, the termite down at the bottom right, that little termite, he puts out this sticky substance from a gland in its head. And when a carpenter ant comes and tries to chew it, it gets the sticky stuff like bubble gum all over it, and the carpenter ant leaves, and it's all stuck up, and it just doesn't feel good. So it leaves, and it saved its life by putting out the sticky stuff. So that's a good thing. Another reason why insects are so successful is because they're so tiny. Look at the pin bugs on the pins. They're on tiny little paper points on those insect pins. Those are special pins that you can buy for pinning insects. And look at those little tiny points of paper, and the tiny little insect is about the size of a pinhead on some of them. And because they're so small, a bird wouldn't even be able to see it and find it. It could crawl away fast and hide in a little tiny crack in a rock, and you'd never be able to catch them. And sometimes they lay thousands of eggs in a cluster like in the middle. And those clusters, there's so many of them, something might go in there and eat one or two, but there's enough of them that survive because there's so many. And then look at the stages of the insect on the right. If one stage of caterpillar is green on the right and it turns to brown, the birds only are looking for the green caterpillars, and once it turns brown, then they don't eat it, and so it saved its life. And of course, camouflage on the bottom right, that's the neatest one there. I love those geometric moths. They're the kind of moths that I like to study as in a hobby. So now we're going to go over, and we're going to take a little break here, and I have a bunch of interesting insects that you've probably never seen before, ever. And these are from all around the world, and some of them aren't even insects. So we'll bring this up, and you'll detach this and bring it over to show you some really neat things I brought.
All right. Here, I'm going to switch the camera around so you guys can see the bugs. All right. Okay, guys. Let's see. Here we go. You guys can still see everything good? Okay.
Can you see me in it or just the lights?
Now you can.
Okay. Can they hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's some bugs from around the world. Some of them are from near here. The interesting one that I like the most here on the top is called the giant bush cricket from New Guinea. This bush cricket is much bigger than the kinds of leafhoppers and leaf insects that we have here in the United States. Our biggest that we have here in Central Florida is this one to the side. It also looks like a leaf. It's a pretty big one, but look how much bigger this one is from New Guinea. We also have a famous weta special cricket that has these really sharp back legs from New Zealand. We have a leaf matted from Malaysia. This is a Dobson fly that we have here in Central Florida. And then we have a typical praying matids from here in Florida. And we also have a matted from Malaysia that has a lot more spines on it here. And then we have a funny kind of cricket called the cigala from France. We also have these really long, giant walking sticks. Look at the length of my hand, and the walking stick is even longer than my entire hand. It's really big. And those are from New Guinea. And we have an army ant from Costa Rica. We have dragonflies, and this is a wasp here. It's called a pigeon tremex or horntail wasp. And then we have a carpenter bee from India. We have a spider wasp down here, similar to the Pepsis wasp that I'll show you in a second. And then we have the famous cicada killer that we have on our school grounds. And then we have some other damsel flies over on this side. And there's this a big damsel fly from Guatemala that's a lot bigger than the ones we have here in Central Florida. This is an interesting insect you'll get here in Central Florida. It's called the water scorpion. And these will be found dead on the, I don't know why, but on the windshield of some of your cars, you'll find these water scorpions sometimes. They are really in bodies of water. Okay, and then we have this one here, the army ant from Costa Rica. This is the army ant. It's look how big it is compared to my finger. It's a big ant, and they can crawl all over your body and sting you to death. I mean, it's a very big ant. And here are some really gorgeous butterflies from around the world. There's one moth in this case. There's one moth at the very bottom that looks like a swallowtail butterfly, and it's from Madagascar, and it's family Uranidae. It's an interesting butterfly mimicking wasp. All these other butterflies are from different countries, and the country is below the butterfly. It tells what country they're from. Pretty neat, huh? Okay. Now this one here is not an insect. This that I'm holding here is a tailless whip scorpion from Peru. Peru is in South America. We have little ones here that are about half the size of your little fingernail. They're real tiny, and you can get them under rocks. But these crawl on bark and up on trees in Peru. Pretty interesting, huh? They look like they have real strong grasping front legs, but they're harmless. The natives down there, the Peruvians, they just let them crawl around their face and head, and they're just they tickle you, but they don't hurt you. This is the largest scorpion in the world, called the giant imperator scorpion from Central Africa. Central African Republic is real hot, and it's hot and humid and tropical there, and these giant scorpions just don't get any bigger than this. You can purchase this kind of scorpion, little smaller ones, in the pet stores that are very similar. But this is a pretty darn big scorpion, isn't it? I wouldn't want to be stung by that stinger down there. That thing is, that stinger at the bottom is a pretty big stinger, isn't it? And then finally, we have the famous bird-eating tarantula spider. This big tarantula spider from South America, when it says bird eating, what I mean by that is that it goes up into the nest and it sucks the juices of the baby birds. It doesn't jump on a bird in flight. It goes into the nest and eats the baby bird, or lays its eggs on the small spiders on the baby bird. But the giant Pepsis wasp above the spider there, this is a pretty big wasp. Look at the size compared to my finger. That's a giant wasp, a lot bigger than the wasp we have here. And it parasitizes the spider here and keeps the spiders under control so that it's really good. So the little birds will survive and there won't be too many spiders and their population will be minimized by this wasp. The wasp will lay its eggs on the spider, and then the eggs of the wasp will turn into larvae. The larvae, like big maggots, will suck the juices of the spider, killing the spider, and then the wasp will hatch out finally and go seek out more spiders. That's sort of neat, isn't it? Okay, I hope you enjoyed those few insects that I brought. Okay, can we eliminate that? We have to put it. Oh, there we go. Okay, then I can move this to the right. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about some of the jobs that you can get when you get older and go to college. There are more entomologists, more jobs in entomology, the study of insects, than any other kind of science. There are more scientists involved here than in any other field. Like if you compare marine biology or veterinary science to entomology, there's far more entomologists than other scientists. Some of the different jobs in entomology you can have are all listed here. Insect ecology, insect morphology, insect pathology, insect physiology, the naming of insects called insect taxonomy, and insect toxicology, that's killing the insects, how insecticides and other chemicals affect the bugs. Industrial entomology is a study of the insects that make or do things that benefit us, like honey and silk and cricket powder that some people eat and put in cookies. And then medical and veterinary entomology is dealing with the fleas and the bugs on animals. And of course, crop protection entomology is really big because there are all these growers of different foods around the nation, and they have to know how to kill the bugs on the plants. And of course, biological control is introducing good insects to kill bad insects. And then you've got post-harvest entomology, the study of controlling the insect pests once the foods are stored, like your cornflakes. What insects get into the warehouse and attack the cornflakes, and how to get rid of the insects on stored foods. And then, of course, forensic entomology, that's a really good science. That's the study to determine when a person died, and the police hire a forensic entomologist to go out and tell them, this person died 37 hours ago because these little insects took 37 hours to live on the corpse. And then, of course, there's urban entomology, and that's what I do. That's my field. That's residential and commercial pest control. When people come into your house like me and take care of your ants and fleas and ticks and rodents, that's us. And then, of course, there's university entomology, those people who like to stay at the university and teach all of these different fields. There has to be people to teach everyone. So it's a huge, huge science. And it's a great place to think about going when you get older. So now I'm going to go into each one of them really fast and show you some of the things and what it looks like the different jobs do. Not forward. Oh, okay. And this one here, I'm going to play a little video. And some entomologists called insect ecologists, they study how different insects come down and swoop down and eat the prey. And of course, in this case, the prey is a fish. And they've introduced the bellostomatid bug that likes to eat fish. And they study which kind of fish it likes to eat. Let's see if it likes to eat this one. Yep, there it is. The big bellostomatid bug is a giant water bug, and you find these in canals all around Central Florida. See how he brought the fish up? That's the study of the giant water bug killing a fish. Okay, and then insect morphology is the study of the form of the insect. If you start looking at it with a microscope, you can see different structures on the insect, and if we can build things out of those structures, we may be able to create something brand new, a new innovation or a new invention that maybe this thing will repel water better, and we can keep it in paints or put it on our house, and all the heat will dissipate, and we won't be hot anymore just by copying what's on the insect. So studying the insect morphology and shape and function is really can be important. Also, insect pathology is a real interesting field. This is up and coming type of field where you go out in the crop and you find a bug that died naturally. And there's the caterpillar on the left that died. And then they dry it out, put it on agar, and they breed the disease. And then they mix the disease with water and they spray the disease out on the crop, and that doesn't hurt people. And see, they're not even wearing respirators, and you can spray the disease out there, and then all the caterpillars die, and you didn't need to use an insecticide. So that's a really neat science. And then, of course, insect physiology. It studies mosquitoes and different insects that harm man, and then we can discover how they actually live, what part of their biology we can work on to help control them. And so there's a lot of work needed in this area. Insect taxonomy is the one that I like as a hobby. These are different butterflies and moths being pinned. They use spreading boards and they dry them out, and then they stay for hundreds of years in a collection like this in drawers. And that's the famous Dr. Emmel, who recently passed away. Tom Emmel is showing off a lot of the butterflies at the McGuire Center in Gainesville. And if you've never seen a huge butterfly collection or moth collection, you need to go to Gainesville and go to the McGuire Center. They photograph each specimen and they work on documenting every single butterfly known in the world. It's a real huge butterfly center there in Gainesville. And then insect toxicology is studying the different chemicals that kill bugs and which ones kill them the best and which ones are safer to use around your kids and pets and people at home. And that way we don't get hurt. So that's a really good field to study. And then there's industrial entomology, and that's actually getting honey from the bees, or having the groups and hundreds of silkworm moths breeding up in the upper left there, and they take the silkworm cocoons and they make silk from it. And then they breed in these huge kitchen type freezer units. They're cooling down and breeding slowly these beetles. They'll come out and produce this shellac. So there's a lot of things we get from bugs that way. And of course, medical and veterinary entomology, killing the mosquitoes and fleas and ticks that hurt us, that's a real important science. A lot of people don't like mosquitoes and they never want to see mosquitoes around. So they study mosquito control and they go around in trucks and treat mosquitoes in yards and study mosquitoes in laboratories to find out better ways to control them. And then, of course, crop protection entomology, finding out which variety of crop grows the best and which one is more insect tolerant, and taking samples with a net out in the field, out in the crops, to find out what time they're ready to be treated and if we even have to treat. Sometimes we don't have to treat at all if it's a good variety. So crop protection entomology is a whole field in itself. It's really a great thing to study. Biological control is another really fun one. I had a job for a summer doing this in the bottom right. It's called an insectary, where the pests and the parasites are all breeding in a big lab, and you breed them and you make millions of each, and then you see how they are controlled. You release the parasites onto the pests and see how long it takes them to breed on the pest. So you can see the pest caterpillar in the bottom left, and you see the parasitic wasp laid all these eggs, and the eggs have sucked the juices, and now they become cocoons that are still attached to the caterpillar. And that kind of study is real amazing. It's neat to watch that. And of course, the ladybug, it's such a beneficial insect. It's biological control right there. She just eats the aphids and scales and mealybugs right off the leaves of the plants. Post-harvest entomology deals with those things like, and there's the milk-bone dog biscuits and all the little beetles in that box. How'd they get in there? How can we prevent those beetles from getting in there? And look at the weevils in the rice. Sometimes you pour out some rice or some pasta and you get these little weevils in them. How'd they get there? How can we prevent that from happening? It's a whole field that you can be employed in and make really good money at. And of course, forensic entomology, that's looking at a dead animal or a dead person and finding out how long it took for that person to die. And you have to take samples of the flies and the maggots and the beetles on the person to know how long it took for them to die, and then look at the stages under the scope and decide how many hours it's been. And the police really rely on you to know how long it was sometimes before something died. Of course, this is my field. There I am in the upper right applying some bait around a window. I mean, we have trucks like on the bottom left where we carry all the products to treat a house and around the perimeter of a home. And then, of course, there's placement of monitor traps and injecting certain products into cracks and crevices so it'll be safe around kids and pets. And that's a whole field on its own too. And there's thousands and thousands of people working in the United States. Massey Services alone, we employ over 2,000 people right now doing this work. So we're a big company. And finally, there's university classes with professors and extension agents teaching all of us. This is how I learned at the university, going out in the field, going out in classrooms, looking under the scopes like that, studying the bugs. And it's a really fun thing. And more girls are getting into it too. You can see in the picture up in the upper right, there's 2 girls there, 3 girls maybe, yep. And then there's some ladies in the other class, and the one down at the bottom looking, there's lots of people, guys and girls, are entomologists now, and we enjoy being and working together. Okay, so that's the finish of the slideshow. Are there any questions now? Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.